Episode number 224, using print design to create a worshipful atmosphere with Lee Snow and Will Gann, part 2. Let's do it.
This is the definitive podcast for helping you plan, create, and execute dynamic worship experiences at your church. Useful, practical content in the areas of production, worship, communications, first impressions, and more. This is Making Sunday Happen.
Well, hey guys, welcome to Making Sunday Happen. I'm Carl Barnhill. Thanks for hanging out. If you touch the worship experience in any way at your church, this is the podcast for you. So thank you for being here. Christmas is on the way, and it's coming like a freight train. If you are behind on getting some ready-made media for your Christmas worship experiences, I want you to check out our selection of mini movies, service packs, full series boxes, and more for your Christmas series. I want you to go to 1230.media/Christmas to download dozens of steak quality media content for fast food prices. 1230.media/Christmas. I know you like my analogy. It's awesome. Go get you some steak. Today on the show, we are going to continue our series on how to use print design to create a worshipful atmosphere. We are talking about the printed handout pieces that you use in your worship experience. So here are some questions that we're asking. Should you even use handouts? What should they look like? What's on them? Is less information better? Should I just use worship guides? Do I need to do bulletins? How do I do bulletins and handouts that help move people to their next step in my worship experience? Do I just need to do sermon notes? How do I use printed material in my worship experience? That's what we're talking about. Last week, we talked to Lee Snow from Warm Springs Road Church of Christ in Columbus, Georgia. Lee pastors a church of under 100 people weekly, so I wanted to get his perspective on this topic. This week, I'm talking with Will Gann, who is the communications director at Bayside Community Church in Bradenton, Florida. Bayside is a multi-site church averaging over 10,000 people on a weekend. So I want you to see the contrast of how these two churches use print design in their worship experience. I am not saying that one is better than the other. I'm not saying that one is good and one is bad. You need to be able to reach the culture that you're at. So I wanted you to hear from both kind of sides of this topic and both church sizes, so that you can see, no matter where you are in the spectrum, what things overlap and what things are different. So those questions, all the questions and topics that I've just mentioned will be addressed more with Will this week. So we're going to jump into my interview with Will. Then I'll be back later in the show for the mailbag and to wrap up a few things. So here is my interview with Will Gann. Check this out. Hey guys, today I welcome to the podcast Will Gann. Will is the communications director at Bayside Community Church in Bradenton, Florida. We're going to talk today about how to use print design to create a worshipful atmosphere. You guys have heard from Lee Snow, kind of a smaller church perspective, and I want to get Will's take from a larger church. So, Will, why don't you kind of introduce yourself and tell us about Bayside and kind of the size of it and how you serve there at the church.
Yeah, man. Well, thanks for having me on. Bayside is a church based in Bradenton, Florida. We actually have 8 different locations right now across the Sun Coast, the state there. We're right about 17 years old right now, so it's just a church plant. Our lead pastor's name is Randy Bazette. He also serves on the board for ARC, Association of Related Churches.
Yeah.
Man, God's just been doing some special stuff here. And I was on staff at a few other churches before here, but God just kind of, did a work in me and moved me from ministry to ministry. And so I landed in a communications director role here at Bayside. And we're just trying to figure it out just like everybody else and love our community in the process. So it's going well. So.
Ain't that the truth? So I was on staff at New Spring Church before we jumped into 1230 full time. And people sometimes think that you're in a larger church and you don't have any problems, or you have all the money in the world, or budget's not an issue, or things like that. But kind of the opposite is true. I mean, the same problems exist in a larger setting as a smaller setting. Would you agree?
Oh man, that's so true. I think in a smaller setting, you kind of have that Instagram filter over your eyes with large churches. You're like, man, they just don't know what it's like to just be trying to get over this hump and trying to get people to connect and trying to get people engaged. So then we cross over that border to a large church, and at the root of all the issues, we're just trying to get people engaged. We're trying to get people connected. We're trying to get people to come to church and to know Jesus. And
Yeah.
there's still, no matter how big we get, there are still people in our communities that have never heard about us.
Yeah.
And so we're facing the exact same things all across the spectrum. I think that's a beautiful thing. I think it's cool that God has put us in a scenario to where we can really relate with each other and learn from each other, because just like a small church can learn from a large church can learn a lot from a small church as well.
True. Okay, so from a kind of a larger church perspective, you guys have 8 locations, you mentioned. Tell me how you guys use print material in a little bit different way, and kind of the theory of less is more. You don't really use a printed piece, a large printed piece necessarily every week. So tell me how you're handling printed pieces each week. What's your approach?
Yes. So each week we have a sermon note passed out that we give to everyone that walks in at all of our locations. They'll have some way of taking notes during the message. It's really big on the heart of our pastor, and it's part of our culture. We just take notes. We think it's going to stick better and last longer. So no matter where anybody is, they have a spot where they can take notes, whether it's on the app, but more importantly, right in front of them in person. So that's something we do hand out every single weekend. Aside from that, we have things available. So for people that are first-time visitors, or they're just new to Bayside or new to the culture, and they go to our Connect centers, we have stuff available for them every weekend. We have a welcome guide that tells them about the church and who we are. We have all that stuff available, but as far as just passing stuff out, we try to keep that down to a minimum until it's really those big ticket items, whether it's the men's night event, or whether it's the Christmas event that we're doing, or Easter service times, or big series, the big draws of the year that we do. We usually just try to keep it down from there until we have those moments where we have an actual print handout that we hand them as they walk in the door.
Yeah. So why have you guys chosen to go this route?
For our context, we're really seeing that our time is limited with people's attention. And we really want our words to carry weight in our community. And we really want people's attention when we speak. And when we're trying to get them to go to something, we want that to really mean something to them. So we're trying to lessen the noise a little bit week to week, so that when we do have something to give them, they know it's special. They know it's something they really need to go to. But not only that, they know it's something that they need to invite somebody to. And that's a really big thing, because what we found in our context is when we just keep telling people stuff over and over, week in, week out, come to this group, come to this ministry, come to this event, come to this, it just begins.
It's noise.
It just begins to be noise. And we understand that people have a life outside of church. Like in ministry, it's hard to understand because this is our life, but people have a life outside of church, and we want people to have relationships, and we want people to have friendships, and we want people to have neighbors and go to sports and do all those things. So we just try to keep the noise down a little bit. That way, when we do have something to invite them to, they know it's special and they know it's worth coming to.
So you mentioned worship guides are kind of special things. Tell me about those. So you guys use worship guides for like big series, special occasions, big things going on at the church. What is included in those? Walk me through what you do for those.
Yeah, so whenever we have a lot of visitors, a lot of people that are new to the church, whether that's our At the Movies series or Easter services, Christmas candlelight, those are the times where we really want to make sure that no matter if people are paying attention in the service or not, they have something that tells them about us and who we are and the heart for our community. So during those big ticket items, I guess you would say those big weekends, we'll pass out something. whether it's a what's coming up next piece or a survey. There's a couple of different things that we do. And in those, there will be a note from our pastor, just so that they can know his heart and know, that he's just an ordinary person, just like everybody else, but also just get to know him a little bit and his family. There will also be a schedule of what's coming up. So, hey, next weekend we're starting this, this cool series. We want you to come, or we'll have information on our youth conference or information on our kids camp in the summer, something that they know that this is a place that their family can really get invested at every age group. And then especially during Christmas, there will be a time where we have a survey that we hand out to our church. And this is really important to us as a church. In this survey, what we'll do is it'll be in the printed handout, and we'll talk about it in service, and we'll say, hey, take some time, fill out that survey, and turn it in at the end of service. And we'll ask usually 2 questions, maybe 3, but it's usually 2 questions that we ask. The first question is, where would you like to see our next location? And the second question is, what are some topics that you would like to hear about next year in our sermon series?
Good. And
then we take that data, we put it all together, and we figure out what's really on the hearts and minds of our church. And this past year, we asked that question, and the number 1 answer, over 200% more than the number 2 answer, is that our church wanted to hear about depression and anxiety. They really wanted to hear about that in our church. So we took some time. We strategically picked a time of the year where the most people were going to be here. We built a series around it, and it became one of the most impactful moments in our church. And that series it was huge. And that was all because we took the time to print that out, to hand it to them, and to get their feedback and put it into action.
So tell me, you obviously have designers on staff. So tell me walk me through the process of, okay, in my year, these are the points that we're going to do a special piece, and then here's the process of getting that designed and printed.
Yeah, so it kind of starts at the very beginning. We meet, a group of us meet with our lead pastor and just kind of say, hey, what do we want to talk about this year? What kind of series do we want to kick around? And it'll be really collaborative. We do everything in a really collaborative environment. And so we'll kind of map out 6 months of the series. And if any of those big weekends fall under there, then what we'll do is we'll then take those ideas to our team and to our designers. And we have 2 designers on staff right now. And so they'll really just, we'll give the vision to them, and they'll talk about, the branding and all the things that we could do. And we'll talk about, what do we want to invite people back to? What is the information that we want to be in it? And we'll just make sure it's branded really well to the series that they're in. And so it really goes from a brainstorming room to the desk. And what we say is that if there's ever a time where we're designing and we're coming up on that writer's block, that time where it's like, I don't know where to take it from here, or I don't know what I should do, or what colors I should use, or what font. I don't really know where I should take it. That's usually an indicator that we didn't brainstorm enough. And so we'll take it back to the room. We'll get a bunch of opinions. We brainstorm a lot before we produce anything. But that's just because we want to make sure we're clear on vision and clear where we're headed, and make sure everything's cohesive, so that it's more understandable for people. So we'll do a bunch of different revisions. We have a software that we use where we kind of talk back and forth and make edits to it, and kind of a collaborative designing thing with a few.
What software do you use? What is that?
So it's a website that we use called Cage App. And so our designers will design something, put it up on Cage, and then we'll have a couple people that, dialogue back and forth. Hey, what if we tried this? What if we moved this? Can we do this? And it allows us to make edits and stuff like that. Then they'll take it back and upload revisions. We do that for all of our design pieces, not just our print handouts, but all of our design.
Cool. So what do you decide, whether it's weekly or on these special occasions, what do you decide, or how do you decide what goes in, what doesn't go in?
Yeah, so I think the way that we decide what goes in is really, we have to name the season that we're in, and we have to really figure out, like, what is the mission of our church in this season, and what is just noise. So what have we put in the past that has worked really well, that we want to try again, or maybe try differently, or what is not necessary? We don't have any what do you call it? the cows. Sacred cows, is that?
Yeah. Sacred cows, yeah.
So we don't have any sacred cows in our environment, in our culture, and so we'll take a printed piece and we'll from the ground up every single time we'll say, do we need to have a note from our pastor in? What does that communicate? Why do we have it in there? And we'll really talk about the why about everything, even if it's repetitive. We'll keep doing it because we want to make sure that it's in there for the right person. We have to keep the why in front of this, not just to fill space, not just to give people information, but just to make sure that it's inspiring and it's worth coming to. And really what we do is we give that to a lot of different people in our church. And so we have a number of people that we just say, hey, what do you think about this print piece? Or what do you think about this design? People from all demographics, and get feedback from people because we want to make sure we're not blinded by anything. And so we give that to a lot of people. And if they say, well, that's kind of weird that this is in here, I don't know why this is in here, then we'll take that feedback. But we really just want to make sure it's clean and clear and it's understandable where we're headed as a church.
So kind of speaking of sacred cows, how do you tell ministries no? So kids ministry wants to announce their thing. It's got to be in the handout. How do you say, this is what is in and this is what is out? How do you tell a ministry no?
So we're not great at saying no, but what we do is we'll say no, but what we can do is, and that's why I would say we're not great at saying it, because we want to make sure we help every ministry that we possibly can.
Yeah.
A lot of people default to it needs to be in the handout, or it needs to be in the video announcements, or it needs to be on social media. That's what a lot of people default to. And instead of just saying, well, no, it can't be, what we need to start asking is, what is the problem that we're trying to solve? What is the issue that we're trying to fix? What is the need that we're trying to provide something for?
Right.
Because they might just see social media, they might just see the print handout and see that people have it in their hands, but maybe they just need to come up with a creative way to talk to their volunteers or to speak to their ministry or to recruit people.
So the handout might not be the best vehicle for promoting that thing.
It might be the easiest, but it might not be the best. And so what we want to do is we want to serve our church and our ministries well. And we think by just putting it in a handout, that's not even serving them well. And so what we do is if it can't go in there, or if we don't think it should go in there, then we'll just set up a meeting with them and get to know their heart for it and just explain why we think this wouldn't work or why another option would work. But with that aside, one of the things that we put into practice is nothing really goes into a handout. Nothing is spoken on platform unless it really applies to at least 50% of our congregation. We want to make sure that we're not just pinpointing people, and in doing so, we're disconnecting the majority of the church by just talking about one thing. So there are certain types of small groups, there are certain types of ministries that we probably won't talk about on platform because we don't want to disenfranchise everybody else that's in the seat. So we usually keep that 50-50 rule, but then when it comes to the people that we do have to say no to, we'll say, here's what we think would be a win in your case instead of this.
Yeah. I know several of us in the space have those percentages. I usually say 80-20, but I would agree with you. If it's not over 50%, there might be a better vehicle to promote your thing. Yeah. Okay, so let me ask you flat out, does a handout, or how does printed material enhance your worship experience? What are the benefits of having handouts to give people?
The first thing that comes to my mind is, as far as the worship experience, the first thing that comes to my mind is just being able to interact, for people that really want to take notes. There are people across all generations that just love to write notes. And so we want people to interact with that. The second thing that comes to my mind is we want people to have a way of inviting other people to church. And I mean, that's what this whole thing is about. We don't want to keep it for ourselves. We really want them to be able to take this to someone else and say, you really need to come to this. And that's why it's important to make these handouts beautiful. That's why it's important to make these handouts communicate the right thing, not only through words, but through design, because if our neighbors are getting these, if the people at our grocery stores are getting these, if we want our church to invite people, then let's make it look like something worth coming to if
Right.
you've never been to the church before.
Good.
So
Good
that's really how it enhances, because I think when you give somebody something like that, it makes them feel like they are a part of something as opposed to just spectating in something. It gives them a piece of participation, a piece of ownership. Like, well, now I have a duty to either take notes, to invite somebody, and to have a next step. So I think that's really how it enhances our worship experience.
Good. Do you think that less content is better? So is less more?
Yeah, I would say there's a balance. There's absolutely a balance for that. I think there would be more of an argument to say less is more than there would be to say more is more.
Yeah.
And so, but I think there definitely has to be a balance with what is the information that people really need to know in order to take the next step. Like,
Right.
We don't want to give them too much information to where they just automatically know all about it, and then that limits our creativity and the design of it, and limits how we can communicate through design because we have so much information on there. We want to give people the who, what, when, where, why. And if that's in there, then we're good to go. We want to make sure the design really supports it and kind of fades into the background of it and supports that information. So I think that, yes, less is more in that sense, but the reason less is more because it gives us more room for design and to communicate more than I think we could with words.
Yeah. So I think that sometimes with our printed pieces, we think that we should have all the information about a certain event, a certain thing, where sometimes, I want to see if you agree with this, sometimes it can just be the essentials, like you mentioned, and we send them to a URL. So they already have their phone in their pocket. So, go to this URL, /men's event.
Absolutely.
To get more information, have them pull out their phone and get that to sign up on there. We don't have to say email Johnny and here's his email address and you can find him at here. And we don't have to have 3 paragraphs to say what we can in a sentence or two. Speak to that some.
Yeah. So, I mean, the question I would ask somebody is, where is your handout from a few weeks ago? And then I would ask them, where's your phone? And I think they would really know the answer to one of those 2 questions. Usually it's like, well, I maybe have put that invite on the fridge, or if I'm lucky, it's at home somewhere, but we don't really know. It's usually in the car or thrown in the trash or something. Everybody knows where their phone is. Everybody knows how they can access the internet. And that's where our people are living. Our people are living on social media. They're living on their phones. And so if we really want to house the bulk of information, then we want that to be easily accessible for people. So we want to draw people in with the essential information. This event is for you. It's going to be free. It's going to be at this time. Bring a friend. You don't want to miss this. It's going to be amazing. For more information, go to this website. People are already going to websites. Yep. And so we think of it as an extra step, but it's really not, because it's already a step that we're going to take regardless. Whether we take that step to your church event or take that step to somebody else's event, they're going to take that step. So we always want to, for our context, for what I always tell our team, put the essentials printed and make sure it directs them online to the next place.
Good. All right. You talked about this a little bit, but tell me why good design matters.
Yeah, so design, when it comes to print handouts, it really does 2 things. We need it to fade into the background while enhancing the experience of the print handout. And so here's what I mean like that. If the piece is meant to communicate any type of information, then the design shouldn't take away from that information. We don't want people to get lost in the beauty of something and not know what time they're supposed to show up, right? But it needs to fade into the background, but also really support the information that's given. And so the reason that matters is because if I just have a piece that just has a bunch of information on it, I know myself, and I'm going to lose interest really quick. But and I might not get to the information that I need to know if I lose interest really quick. If we have a big synopsis of what's all going to be at this event and why we're putting on this event and everything else, we just have paragraphs upon paragraphs, I'm going to lose interest before I know when the event is or what time it is or what the event even is.
Yeah.
But if we have a design that's really beautiful and it supports the information, that I'm really going to be captivated by that. I'm going to know the heart behind it. I'm going to know the look and feel of it, and I'm going to get all the essential information because that's the only thing there is to read. And I think what design does when it comes to print handouts, when it comes to any type of print design takes the information and so you know about the event, but beautiful design puts you inside of the event to where you can see yourself there. And so I could read about an event, but it'd be really difficult for me to kind of visualize it. I'd have to use my imagination a lot. But if we put that design in the right place, let it fade into the background, support the information, be really beautiful, then all of a sudden I can see myself at this event and I want to come to it.
So last question for you. What are some ways that you guys have found to keep printing cost down? How do I keep my budget in check when it comes to print stuff?
Yeah, so for that, what we've had to do is just be really planned ahead on our things. I know last minute changes happen, but I mean, rush charges are the things that the work of the devil, right? We want to stay away from rush charges as much as possible. So we just have to make sure we're really planned ahead. We have to make sure we're really intentional with our time and make sure we aren't printing anything out of just out of habit as like a knee-jerk reaction. Oh, well, we just need to print stuff. I know that in our one scenario is in our summer series. We do a devotional in our summer series, and we do a summer series called Pause, because we want our church to take time in their year to pause and to connect with God's word. So we print devotionals for everybody in our church. So we have thousands of devotionals that we print. What we've noticed is that even though the number of people in our church is going up, the number of devotionals that we're printing is going down because so many people are engaging online, engaging on the website and stuff like that. So what we could do is we could say, oh, hey, now we have X amount of people here, so we need to order X amount more devotionals. But then that would just become wasted cost. So we really need to track how much we're giving out, how much people are engaging, how much people are engaging online, how many we have left at the end of an event, how many we're throwing away, in order to keep that down and really be good stewards of that. So we track everything with that when it comes to sermon notes, guest guides, devotionals, or anything that we would print, our prayer and fast journals, anything that we would print for our church. We make sure we track it really well so that next year we can be even better stewards of that.
Yeah, love it, man. Well, any parting thoughts? I really appreciate your time. I love this perspective, kind of getting both perspectives, smaller church, larger church, and the difference of the two. So, man, thank you for sharing everything with us. Any parting thoughts as we leave each other today?
No, man, I would, not really. The only thing, it kind of goes back to what we were talking about, how we all have these same struggles, and we all, whether we're in a small church or in a large church, we're all trying to figure it out. And so what I would say is any answer that I've given is only because it works in our context. And so I would say more importantly than trying to keep up with large churches or trying to keep up with what you see other churches doing, what does your church need? Like in order for them to really grow, in order for them to really follow Jesus more, to take that next step, what does your context need? What does your culture need? That might be a print handout, that might not. But I would just say don't compare. Man, comparison is terrible. Figure out what your church needs and figure out a creative way of doing that. That's the most important thing.
Good. Well, man, thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, Carl, I appreciate you, man. Thanks for everything you do.
The show notes for this episode are available now at makingsundayhappen.com.
This week in the mailbag, I asked you, what is one thing you wish you could take off your plate so that you could spend more time in ministry with people at your church? The number one response from you guys, by far, meetings. Staff meetings, team meetings, review meetings. We all hate meetings. So let me encourage you this week, if you can kill a meeting at your church that can be handled with an email, just by sending an email to your team, kill the meeting. Some meetings are necessary, definitely, but if you can kill a meeting, try to kill it. If they are not intentional and planned, they're probably going to waste some time that your team can be doing other things. So look at your calendar, and if you can kill a meeting, kill a meeting. All right, thank you for your responses. Keep those coming along with other questions that you might have. We love getting that. Coming soon for the mailbag, I'm going to be asking you to send in selfie videos asking the questions that you want answered. So if you want to be on the podcast and ask a question, get ready for your chance. I'm going to be putting that out on social media in the near future. So get your question ready. I want you to send in videos. I need videos for every episode next year. So over 52 videos from you guys. So I'm looking for about 60 people to send in your question. You can just Dropbox it to us, send us a link, and we'll put your video right here on the podcast and then answer your question. If I don't know the answer, I will try my best to find the answer for you. So if it has to do with your worship experience, if you're on the First Impressions team, if you're in communications, if you're in production, if you're in worship, if you're on your teaching team, if you're a volunteer or need help with your volunteer culture in executing your worship experience, any number of those areas, if you touch the worship experience, we want to be here for you and be your guide. We are your Yoda. So feel free to get ready to send those selfie videos in. I'll throw that on social media in the coming weeks, so that is on the way. In the meantime, if you want to send in a question or reach out to us, feel free to do that. You can email me, carl@1230.media. You can find me or our team on social media. You can call us anytime, 910-849-1230. 910-849-1230. We are here to help you, so feel free to reach out anytime. The direct URL for our podcast is makingsundayhappen.com. We're a part of the training arm of 1230 Media. So 1230 does ready-made worship media, custom media, that's custom graphics and video, and training. So all three of those buckets fall under 1230 Media. We're all about helping you transform your worship experience. So the podcast falls into that training arm, and the direct URL is makingsundayhappen.com. Next week on the show, I welcome my friend Holly Tate from Vanderbloemen. We have the privilege of producing the Vanderbloemen Leadership Podcast. We have really enjoyed doing that, and Holly will be sharing with us how to build a church communications team that scales up. So if you are on your church communications team, or you know someone that is, if you want to send this podcast or next week's podcast episode to them to check out, this is the one to send to your communications team. So fantastic content on the way next week. I can't wait to share that interview with you. Holly is awesome. She has some incredible content. This is some of the content that she shared at that CC. So you'll be hearing a little bit of that and also some new content as well. So Holly Tate from Vanderbloemen next week on the show. I believe in you guys. You're making a difference for the kingdom. Thank you for listening. Thank you for watching. Go out there and create some incredible worship experiences this weekend. I'll catch you next week.
Making Sunday Happen is a production of the ministry of 1230 Media. For show notes, archive episodes, and more free resources for your church, visit makingsundayhappen.com.